Hello, my friends. Hello, my life warriors. Wherever you are in the world, welcome to the Day In, Day Out podcast. Woo! Today on episode 261, I am very lucky, privileged to have Dai Manuel on the podcast. He is a husband, father, life business mentor, high performance life coach, author, TEDx speaker, also has an addiction to squirrels.
That I do.
And yes, he's here today. How are you today, sir?
Fantastic. You know, I've been looking forward to this conversation after our quick meet and greet last week, and I knew this was coming. And already within minutes of being here, I'm already feeling all jacked up. You know, like I feel excited. I feel engaged. I feel present, and I have a lot to thank, and that's you. Oh. You know, you bring it every time, and I love it. But I got to ask you before we jump in, because I'm so fascinated, because, you know, number 261 is actually my lucky number. Did you know that?
Oh, well, no, you know what? I went through my extensive research and my spy software, which is sitting now on your computer. I know.
That's right.
It's like, yes, I did know 261 was your birthday, which coincides with this.
Who would have known? Who would have known? You know, like, it's pretty good. But no, but seriously, like 261 episodes, I mean, that's just, it's phenomenal. You know, you talk about consistency and showing up, but also that idea of just constantly giving. And thanks for being such a service-driven leader, but more importantly, you know, creating a space like this for conversations like we're about to have, so they can happen, so all of us can partake in them, you know. And but what was it? What got you started? I mean, I'm fascinated. I apologize, I don't know your history or the origin of how you got started. So, you know, before we dive in, maybe that will give us some context of where our conversation is going to go today. But how did you get started?
You know, it started with me walking through the desert late one misty evening. With it, no. And basically, the reason why I started my podcast is, like, when you, like, I've said this before, but I'll say it again, just for people who don't know. Now, when you go out in your teenage life, like, yeah, you like, oh yeah, we're going out, we are Legion, and you turn and you hear a big crowd, and you're like, oh, and away you go. In your 20s, like the mid-20s or so, you're like, we are Legion. You turn around and you hear it's still there, but it's not as loud as it was. Like, by the time you hit your sort of early 30s, you go, we are Legion. And it's like, oh, yeah, many a person's dropped off. Mid-30s, you go, we are Legion. It's like, no. We're a small crack group, which, yeah, we do adventures together. Small adventures, because not as long as they were, because, yeah, we've got responsibilities. It's like, so, you know what I mean? By the time you hit 40 and so, it's still that small crack group. But as life happens to us all, like, yeah, sadly, some people, like, are no longer with us. Some people have moved away, and, like, you know what I mean? Like, through kids, living life, and, like, general responsibilities on a day-to-day basis, we don't have those sort of unique opportunities where we went out, maybe got up to some crazy things. You should know about this. it's like, or, like, basically have those conversations randomly with people you never would have these conversations with. And it's like, goes into this, like, as you get older, you get set in your ways. No, the thing, what happens is you have less opportunities when you get older to have these conversations with people, to keep you open-minded, to keep you sort of malleable to what the world can offer. So this is the reason why I started the podcast. A little bit selfish, to be honest, but if I did not do this, I would not have had the opportunity to talk to a myriad of people like yourself, the great and the good like yourself, on, like, a regular basis. So, you know what I mean? I am very grateful that the podcasting medium exists in this world to facilitate these conversations. And that is my origin story, as you will. And maybe it gives you a little bit of fresh insight to who I am.
Yeah, both, definitely. And thank you for sharing that. It's I love your sort of that metaphor of the legion, you know, that group, you know, because I was feeling very, you know, that actually, it resonates a lot with me, because I also noticed as I got into my mid to late 30s, and even as I started to venture into my 40s, you know, and this, I was amazed by it, because I found I just didn't have that many close male friends. And, you know, when I really started to think about it, I mean, I went through my own big changes and transformations about 12, almost 13 years ago. And of course, my association changed based on me changing. But I started to find that I just didn't have as much male connection, you know, either good males in my life, strong male figures, good role models, good mentors. And because those were always so integral in my development, you know, growing up, well, especially as I got into my 20s and then even at various periods. But here's the thing, you know, I started to look into it, and this is actually a thing. Like, it's very common, you know, for men specifically. And Movember Project did a survey or questionnaire, I guess, in the UK. This would be going back in, I think it was like 2014, 2015. So, you know, 6-7 years ago. And they were surveying all these men in the UK, and they asked, like, how many close male friends do you have outside of family? You know, that you can have serious conversations, sensitive conversations, you know, about money, stress, overwhelm, career, relationships. And based on those respondents, you know, most men could count on one hand how many close friends they had, and the majority of which had fewer than one or two. Like, that's amazing, though, when you really start to think about it, right? Like, you know, you talk about your legion, you talk about her dipping off, and it's like, but why? Why does that happen, do you think?
Well,
like, you know?
Yeah, no, this is the thing. What you say is very true. And like, the whole thing is, you got to, how can I put it? When I think from my sort of experience being a guy and all that, like you're sort of thrust, like you can get thrust together in a team setting and like that bond, everything like that, and you can have that. But when it comes to like sort of going out, doing stuff, and like sort of living life in general, there is less, I don't know why it is. I think maybe it's the nature of work today. There is less of that sort of communal bond to keep people, like guys, together. This is the reason why, like, geez, like my lady is watching 911 Lone Star, and she loves that show. I put it on, and look, but there's the whole thing of, yes, it's a firehouse, which you've got that team of people together. Yes, it's a mixed group, but they have this bond other than just working together to sort of live their lives. So they still interact with it, which most guys don't have today, because it's like, okay, you go out, you do your thing. And when it comes down to, okay, as time goes by, more responsibilities are picked up. Yeah, there's an emphasis to work longer. There's an emphasis to just like, okay, I have to take on more pressure. But where ladies have that sort of, I don't know, that extra sense of, yeah, that you could say sisterhood, bond of community, guys don't really have that, because it's sometimes deemed as a weakness to actually have these conversations, or if they're seen as that sort of, I'm the strong one out of the whole group, they hold that facade until unfortunately it breaks them, you know?
Yeah, that's interesting. You know, like you brought up the vulnerability piece there, and it's true, right? Like, it's, I know I was very much part of that, and I still, you know, actively trying to work through it.
Oh yeah.
You know, my TEDx talk talks about vulnerability being a human quality. It's not a male quality. It's not a female quality. It's a human quality. And but a lot of our connotations of how we experience vulnerability is typically from a weakness standpoint. So we have this belief that the term and that idea is weak. It's something to be avoided. And you know, it's not necessarily the case. You know, being vulnerable can be done in a very safe way, you know, and especially if you look into some of the work Brene Brown's done, you know, like she's really led it, especially in the leadership and in the business space, you know, the professional space. She's really brought vulnerable conversations to environments where maybe that level of vulnerability normally wouldn't be there, you know, or at least not typically. And seeing some amazing developments as a result of that, but also just relationships improving and organizations improving, and as well as, you know, some of those underlying negative things that sometimes create the passive aggressiveness, you know, that we see in the workplace, right? Between certain sections, certain groups, those also go away because we have a healthier way of dealing with those challenges now. Once you understand that vulnerability is just a simple way for us to connect, to understand one another, to be able to empathize and see that, man, you know, here I've been struggling with something. I shared it with my group of male friends, and, you know, half the group put their hand up and said, you know what, I got the same problem, you know, and here I am going around literally thinking I'm the only one that experiences this. No one will understand me, isolating myself. And all I have to do is open up my mouth and say, hey, you know what? I think I could use a little help with this. Anybody else relate to this? Oh gosh, yeah, me too. And that's wild, right? As soon as we start opening up about it, we realize we're not so darn alone, you know?
No, like this is the thing. We're not, you're right. We're not so darn alone, like using your words right there. But it's a case of, if you kind of look, okay, there's been lots of talk of what is a woman lately because of a number of factors going into the world, which I don't have the energy to deal with at this moment in time. Some of them, no, it don't have the energy. But like the whole thing is, you got to sometimes look at what is a man in many regards. Because look, the poster of Captain America behind you, right? Like Captain America, leader, like, yes, Captain America, leader of the Avengers, like, you know what I mean? Does the right thing, everything, like the ideal in the comic, in the movies, everything like that. But it's a case of, yeah, strong, stoic, like, you know, type. But in real life, would Captain America be that like strong, stoic type? Like, who would he have as his counsel? Would he just be like, he wouldn't lead by himself? Would he? Or would, like, you know what I mean? But in many of literature, films, TV shows, everything you'll see out there, if you're going to lead, you lead alone. It's like, yeah, I'm the alpha. It's like, you know what I mean? Alpha doesn't mean jack in many respects, to say the least.
Yeah, I agree. You know, like I think there's definitely some. Well, the ego seems to get in the way. I know that was where my biggest challenges was with ego, right? Just trying to be perceived as something that I wanted, or at least I thought I wanted to be, you know, and like I wanted to be the boss, I wanted to be the guy, I wanted to be the dude, I want to be the man, right? Like, especially professionally, you know, in the organization, my last company I built, it was all ego driven, you know, but yet on the flip side, I was also wanting to serve, but I found because of this constant underlying desire, and it was a selfish desire. It was me wanting affirmations, wanting confirmations, you know, accolades, like just very, very much seeking approval. And really, you know, when I think about it, and I've had many years to unpack this and sort of reflect on it, and a lot of it was just because I wanted to feel that I was enough. You know, like there was that underlying lack of value I had for myself. And so I was always seeking that value from everybody else, right? And by doing certain things. And I found I got a lot of fulfillment from work, but, you know, that ultimately just became a way of escaping, you know, avoiding some of the things that was going on in my life. And, you know, eventually it just led to uncontrollable drinking, you know, just me abusing my alcohol, and which led to other poor choices, you know. And so meanwhile, I'm working in the fitness industry, scaling up a company to 8 figures a year. And on the flip side, I'm, you know, not practicing what I preach, not practicing some of the tenets that had allowed me to get to where I was in life, you know, and I found myself compromising a lot of the things that I valued. And that was where, you know, the wheels on the bus came off, as they say, you know, and man, it was tough. And I think, you know, as I've had more and more conversations with people about this, I find that it's very common. As men, we get into these places where we let our ego guide us, and it's not always from a healthy place, you know, and those motivations aren't always, well, in alignment with our values. And that can be scary too, right? Like, so yeah, anyways, I'm sure we have lots to unpack today, but I appreciate you opening up about this. You know, like I didn't think we were going to go there right away, but I love this. You know, I like this kind of conversation because this is the kind of stuff I've been having or seeing a lot of lately, you know, last few years, especially just trying to connect with other men, just to have conversations like this, because as soon as you do it and we open up to our own communities of other men, it always takes somebody to go first. And that's the thing about vulnerability. One person's got to go first. You know, I started co-facilitating men's groups when we were living in Bali. So this is pre-pandemic. You know, my family and I, we ended up living there for about 2.5 years. And during that time, I was like, you know, I want some better male friends. And, you know, being in a new country, new community, a lot of times it's expats that are establishing themselves. You get a bunch of locals, but Bali is just a hotbed of people traveling and everybody goes there. It's a destination. So it was really cool because it sort of got rid of the need for my wife and I and our kids to want to travel the world. We're like, no, let's go to Bali. The world comes to Bali. So we'll just hang out there and we'll meet people there. And sure enough, we did. And I had this crazy idea that, well, what if we got some other men that might be open to having, you know, real conversations and sharing over dinner once a week, you know, and we ended up calling it Mentorship Mondays. So every Monday night, a bunch of guys would get together for dinner and conversation. But there was only a few rules. And the rules were there was no drinking, no drugs, no drama, you know, like just straight up, you know, guys connecting just to have conversation. But here's the interesting thing. We'd often have a table, like 20 some odd guys around a table. And sometimes it'd just be a bunch of guys looking at each other, no one talking, right? And so we realized that someone had to start the conversation. Someone had to get things going. But that act of vulnerability, to be the person that even goes first, it takes a lot. You know, you got to be ready to do that. But in doing that, it gives permission to everybody else around that table that it's a safe space and you too can now talk. You know, you can share, but because it gives people an opportunity to relate and to ultimately just be present for another man and just to hear what they want to share. And that was a novel experience for me. You know, in my 40 some odd years, I'd never experienced something like that or had a container where those kind of conversations and connection could occur. And it was, you know, I got hooked and now it's really transformed my life, you know, these last 3 years because of these deeper connections and relationships. One, I don't feel so alone. And two, I feel like I got a steering committee of guys that I can rely on, reach out to if I ever have a challenge or just even get some advice or some feedback, you know, some mentorship, if you will.
Absolutely.
And that's what's needed, right? Like, anyway, so I'm curious, what do you have in your life that offers something similar? Because I'm sure you do. You brought up the teams, you brought up coaching this past weekend. I mean, I know you're facilitating these kind of conversations, but I'm just really curious what your thoughts are on what I just shared.
No, you know what? I'll get there in a moment, but I have to ask, when you did the mentorship meetup groups, okay. Now, what did you expect from the group? And what surprised you? What came out of the group?
Oh, that's good questions. Well, you know, I honestly, to be fair, I didn't have any expectations to start it. Mm-hmm. I mean, I called my friend Nick, and just to explain Bali for everybody, it's a big island. And I live down more close to the southern west point, which is sort of the surf side of Bali. My friend lived inland in an area called Ubud. Ubud is known as sort of a yoga mecca. If anyone's ever seen that movie with, what's her name? Julia Roberts. I think it's called Eat, Play, Love. It's a famous book, and she was in the movie, but there's a section called the love section of her life, that season of love, and she spends it in Bali, in Ubud, actually. So if you've ever seen that movie, that's Ubud that you see. And so he lives inland and spent hours north from where I lived. And I remember, you know, he's someone that's been coaching men and working with men's groups for over a decade. And so he was really one of the only people I had a good relationship with where I felt comfortable enough to say, hey, I got this idea, you know, I'm going to call it Mentorship Mondays. We're just guys getting together on Monday night just to share dinner and conversation, you know, and hey, do you think this would be something that you'd be interested in joining? And like, I didn't even finish asking. And he's like, I'll be there. Like right out of the gate, I'll be there. And And right from the get-go, we realized that it was going to be a partnership, and we co-facilitated the meetings, which is wonderful, you know, and because we had to give it a little bit of structure. We learned after 2 months of just trying to do this, we found that it was kind of like herding cats at times, and that there was no structure, no form, and often it would become very, well, the best word I can say is discombobulated. You know, it's like there's conversations happening here and some there and over there. You know, it's just, it was really hard to get the group connected. And so we started to create a little bit of structure just to allow guys more space to connect, to open up, but more importantly, to be heard. You know, because a lot of the times, and this is the thing that surprised me to answer your question, was, okay, let me just share a story. Okay. There was this 18-year-old boy, you know, and I say boy, he was a man. But in his life's development, obviously, compared to a lot of the other guys around the table, it was, you know, he was the youngest guy there. But we had a guy that was 72, and we had everything in between. So you can imagine there's a whole spread, right? Lots of people in different seasons of life, different experiences. But here's the thing. The 18-year-old sitting there, it's his first time. He showed up on a Monday. I don't know how he got there, but he just heard about it, and he showed up. So I got to commend him for that, right? Like, just showing up is a big deal, because, you know, you're going to this men's thing and there's men meeting for dinner. I mean, most people are like, what is this? And he showed up, right? And a bunch of us were already there. He's looking at this table and he's like, am I in the right place? Can I sneak out? But it's obvious, you know, where we hosted it, like, you walk in there, it's the same way to go out. So you come in, you know, we're like welcoming him in. Yeah, exactly. Deer in headlights, as they say. And so anyways, we welcomed him in. He sat down, and this is all before we even got started. And, you know, the rest of the guys trickled in. We have all these guys around the table. And so we get started. We go through the usual welcoming, just sort of to create the tone, really, set the tone, set the stage, so everyone's clear on what to expect, and more importantly, how they can participate to get the most out of that time together. So here's this young guy. He's soaking it all up, but he's still looking around, and you can tell he's pretty sheepish. You know, he's like, "Am I in the right place? Why the hell am I here? You know, like, I don't know if this is right for me." And so we started to open up. And the interesting thing was, one of our older guys that was there, you know, a guy in his 60s, late 50s. He's in his 60s now, but late 50s at the time. And he opened up about something very, very personal. You know, this is the first share of the night. And so the only rule is, when one man's sharing, everyone has to be quiet to give that man full attention, to hear him, you know, to be present for him. And so he shared this thing. It was very deep. And out of respect for the group, you know, we don't share. It's sort of like Vegas rules. What happens at Mentorship Mondays stays at Mentorship Mondays. So I can only share from my experience what I've done or what I've said. And all I can say is that this gentleman shared something that he'd been struggling with almost his entire life. And it was something very personal to him, very real, but also something that he was, you know, definitely afraid to share, especially in this kind of a public forum with a bunch of men that many of them he didn't know. The young guy is sitting kitty corner. So, you know, not just across from him, but across and a couple guys over, but within, you know, like, if he threw his hand across the table, he touched this guy that's sharing. Yeah. And he just locked eyes, and just, you could see his chin was dropped. He was just enthralled with what was being shared. And he was nodding. We could tell that he was just engaged. And I was like, wow, okay, that's kind of cool. Like, he's here. He doesn't look like he wants to run away anymore, you know? And then here's the thing. That man finished sharing. Another gentleman shared. But then after that, when we said, hey, does anybody else have anything they'd like to share tonight? The young guy puts his hand up and says, yeah, I do. Guy brand new, just there. He's only heard a couple guys share before him. And he's like, yeah, I've got something I want to talk about. I want to share with you guys. So I'll cut to the end. The meeting finishes. Nick and I approach this young guy just to sort of say, hey, how did it go? You know, just gets feedback, make sure, check in with him. Are you doing okay? Because what he shared, I mean, you could tell there were some guys around the table that were like, holy smokes. Like, this is, you know, he was sharing about an addiction that he was working through. And we came up to him afterwards and said, so what do you think? Like, how did you enjoy, you know, did you enjoy this experience? Like, do you think you'll be back? And he says, you know what? This is one of the best experiences of my life. I shared tonight something I've not shared with anybody before. And we're both like, whoa. And he goes, yeah, and I feel great for that. You know, I just feel great to have been able to share that and get it out there. But more importantly, two other guys came up to him and said, listen, I've been working through that myself in the past. So all of a sudden he found other guys that also had on different stages of the same journey. right? They're just a little bit further along. But now this is where mentorship comes into play. They can support, they can guide, they can provide insights, but also just be an ear to hear and listen and relate and empathize, right? And it was beautiful. You know, it was one of the most amazing things that we saw, but we know that young guy, and I mean, since then I've kept in touch with him. He's in a great place. He's thriving. He's got a great online digital business. He's traveling the world, or at least again now after COVID. And you know, he's really making something beautiful with his life, but he's also showing up for other men now. You know, he's showing up, and he's the way he speaks, the way he carries himself. And it's because we've developed a healthy relationship with this understanding of vulnerability, you know, because it is a skill. But we need a safe place to practice the skill. And to be fair, most of us growing up, I know the men in my life, you mentioned the stoic nature of certain types of men, right? Don't emote, don't show emotions, don't cry, you know, and unless it's to be angry and pissed off, right? That's an emotion we seem as men. It's okay to share that one. But as far as anything on the more sensitive side or the more emotionally connected side, yeah, it's very different, you know, how we've been brought up, at least myself, as a man who identifies as a man, also 45, put things into context and history here, you know, the men I grew up with, they said, don't cry. You know, we wouldn't open up about personal things or challenges in our relationships, you know, or challenges with work and career or finance. Like we wouldn't, we'd always put on that happy face. Yeah, I'm okay. And then we talk about surface conversations, you know, we'll talk about the weather, talk about sports, talk about how the kids doing, talk about our wives, but we would never talk about ourselves.
No, but this is the thing, like in order for guys to like generally talk about themselves in just a hangout session, you've got to go through the superficial before you get to the fish.
That's right.
And like, this is the thing. Yes, the laughing, the joking and everything like this. Then there'll be one or two moments of clarity where you'll be like, yeah, how did you feel like know this? And they'll be like, okay. Then the conversation gets serious for maybe 20 minutes, half an hour before it goes back to the superficial. And it just, that's the way it normally goes. From my experience and from like most guys, like, you know what I mean? I like seeing out there, you know?
It's when you know, and to be fair, like this is not a skill that I grew up with naturally, nor did I have role model to me. But it was always something that I knew I wanted. And when it came to business, though, and this is the interesting thing, okay, business wise, I would be the first guy to have the tough conversations. I have a problem with one of my team members. I'm going to pick up the phone or I'm going to go see them face to face. I'm not going to text. I'm not going to send an email. I'm like, we're going to have a conversation on this because that's the easiest way to deal with the challenging topic or situation, you know, and that from my own experience, that was the best way to deal with it professionally. But yeah, when it came to personal, and it was like, I had no idea of how to do it.
Yeah.
And I couldn't overcome the intimidation or those little voices in my mind that would judge myself before I'd even said anything. You know, like I just had a really hard time trusting individuals, people, especially men. And, but I knew that there was a big void there and I wanted the connection. I didn't want the superficial conversations anymore. I found them, they were very trying and to be fair, boring and not stimulating. And so I found myself starting to withdraw, you know, and me naturally as an introvert, I choose to work as an extrovert, but I am naturally introverted. When you start to withdraw as an introvert, watch out because that's a slippery slope. And once you go down there, you know, it's really easy just to stay there, you know, and because it's very comfortable for me, you know, to not connect with anybody, but that's not the life I want to live, you know, and I know what that does for my mental health when I'm not connected to others and I'm not connected to a community and I'm not showing up as my authentic self. I know what it does to me. And so it's being very proactive, but also less reactive, you know, to some of these negative stimulus and more importantly, situations in life. And so I wanted to share about this sort of the men coming together for men, because I think it's just such a beautiful thing. And I know it's a conversation that's happening a lot more frequently now than ever. And I have to my hat goes off to women, you know, especially around the Me Too movement. I know there's certain people that have some very negative ideas around that, but you know what? It brought awareness around certain types of conversations, but also a whole lot of accountabilities. And yes, there is the gender lines there as well, that if now, if they blurred a bit more, yes, they have. We are much more accepting of people, how they want to be represented, but also how they want to be identified. Now, I'm fine with that, like, to each their own. That's great. But these tough conversations, Me Too really took it to the forefront and said, listen, this isn't okay. These situations, these bad things that have happened to certain individuals, especially women, it's not right. But then we started to see other men that started to come forward talking about their own abuse as well. And so it's now become much more, I don't want to use the term mainstream, but it's a lot more accepted. It's more out there, these types of conversations. And then there's podcasts like yours, which is also another outlet for these conversations to happen in a controlled environment, but it's a safe environment, and I hope us sharing this conversation today, it just tweaks other men out there, that there are groups out there. Most of them are all nonprofit. Find one. Just find one and show up. And most of them you can do online. You don't have to show up at any place physically. Mind you, though, I prefer showing up to a place physically. I prefer having that in-person contact. But if you don't have it, go to the next best thing. But those are just some thoughts on that, because it's changed my life. I mean, I know people say that all the time as a cliche, but it really has transformed how I engage and interact with other men, which has made my life much more enriching, as well as just I've started to get to know myself better too,
Yeah. No, but this is the thing. Okay, look, we live in a world which is more connected than it's ever been. Okay, but like the whole thing is the majority of the connections you build are BS connections. Just just like, yeah. Look, if I really put my mind to it, like say with LinkedIn, I could connect with 20,000 people in like 6 months. Boom. And yet the quality of that wouldn't be nothing. And I think this is the thing, like more and more people have connected, see things, everything like this. But if they're looking at certain social medias, they're seeing the highlight reels of this is how you should be living your life, 6 figures. Like, so they believe that's what they want, but it's not necessarily what they need. And like,
well said.
With what you've been doing, like basically bringing people together, bringing guys together to have these conversations, instead of like looking at going, I want this. It's like going, wait, I might say I want this, but I really need this. And if you can bring what you want and what you need together, that is a very powerful thing to help. Basically, it's like one step away from truly finding your purpose and getting that drive to go forward. It's always when I see people like, oh yeah, and like it's taken a long time to get to this sort of realm of thinking. Like they go, I want this, but it's like, you really need this, but you can't, like, you never can really see what you need until, like, hey, you've taken a great fall, you've like basically got battered, bruised, and then one day it comes up to you and goes, hey, you need this in your life. And then you're like, look at it and go, yeah, you're right, I do. And that want fades away.
Yes, you're right. And you brought up that why, or that purpose, right? And that's, it's not easy to figure out, and it's not even so much figuring it out. I always appreciated, I think who was the one that talked about it quite a bit? I think it was Simon Sinek, and he said, figuring out our whys is an act of discovery, not an act of invention, which I always appreciated, because I think a lot of the times we feel this pressure to figure out why, what is the purpose? Because we hear people asking it all the time online, right? Talking about why, know your why, tell your why, share your why, like, and why do I need to know my why? It's interesting because I think there's a lot of pressure to have to know what that is, rather than putting ourselves on a path that allows us to naturally discover it. And it's looking for the opportunities to get on a path that we actually want to be on. And what we can learn from that. And I'm not wanting to talk so much in theory, but to put this into context, my why has changed. The way that I've find fulfillment in my life has changed over the last 20 years. What it was in my 20s is not what it is in my 40s. In my 20s, I was very motivated to be successful, and the way I qualified and quantified success is very different than how I quantify and qualify success today. But back then, yes, I was motivated: home, wife, kids, picket fence, 1.5 vehicles, a dog, I had this idealized version of what I thought a life was meant to be. And that's what I thought I wanted. And I knew once I would get that, that would motivate me to keep going. That would be my why, to then keep what I got, and that I realized was so unfulfilling that I did drink more. I had this bit of a gap. I had these things that I said I was, and this is who I believed I was and who I wanted to become. And then I had who I kept showing up. And there was a big gap between those 2 points, and I'd go as far to say it was actually more of a chasm. It wasn't as easy just walking from point A to point B because there was this insurmountable dip in between the two. And so what do? At least what did I do? I just filled it with stuff, this void that I felt about myself. I would fill it with things that didn't really bring me any meaning nor fulfillment in life or happiness or joy even, drinking, occasional drug use, wasting money, gambling at times, just doing things to distract myself from actually getting vulnerable with myself and getting clear on what is it that I want? Who do I want to be surrounded by? What kind of experiences do I want in my life? And most importantly, why do I even want that? What is the real motivation there? Most of us don't ask the questions. And even if we ask the questions, we don't give ourselves enough space to actually think about and answer them. And so that was something that worked really well for me, just creating a little bit of space, asking those questions, and then being okay if I didn't know the answer. That's sometimes frustrating, but it's okay. It's okay not to know. It really is. And I had to come to that, not naturally, kind of, spoon-fed, but regardless, that's sort of a perspective I have now. And my only thing that I regret is I wish I had that perspective 20 years ago, because I think my life would be very different today. But then again, I may not be where I am today had I not gone through the experiences that I did have. So, hey, it is what it is, right?
Indeed. Because this is the thing. You mentioned this earlier in our conversation. You made a business which made 7-8 figures. You mentioned this, and this is like many people are going, yeah, you had the cash, you were doing well, and yet you weren't fulfilled. You know what I mean? Some people be very confused by that, but the whole thing is going down that sort of path of self-discovery, looking at yourself, getting into that realm of self-reflection. And this is the thing, people forget, when you do self-reflection, you see wonderful things, beautiful things, see courageous things, but in the darkness, in the shadows, there is the ugly, and which makes us recoil from who we are at times. Right. So what was the key moment, would say, which was hey, this has to stop, and there's a better direction for me?
Well, I'm a slow learner, so it took me. There's been a couple. Well, actually, there's been 3 really. As far as saying dramatic, and I'd say at times traumatic experiences that I've had, since I was 14, and. I'll just give you a quick overlay and then we can dive into it. But, I am someone that's worked in the health and wellness industries now for 28 years. Okay. A long time, since I was 17. And I didn't come to health and fitness naturally, though. As a teenager, I was morbidly obese. And being in that overweight, very unhealthy state, that was my normal. Life was hard. Everything was hard. And I was very depressed, withdrawn, all the typical cliche or stereotypical ideas that we have with people that are in that state of unhealth. Oh man, that was my life. I was living that. But also factor in, I was a prepubescent teen. and I was coming to puberty slow, largely due to my unhealth, my lack of activity, and the way that I was nourishing my body, which wasn't, a lot of calories, just very nutrition poor calories. And so, in essence, I was starving myself from nutrition, which makes our bodies want to eat more. And people don't seem to understand this, but it's true, right? Like people that are extremely overweight are often malnourished. And we find that hard to believe. We're like, well, they get plenty of food. Well, yeah, but not plenty of nutrients at times. The sources of calories is very different. And it might be very calorie rich, but yes, nutrition poor. And that was my state. That's where I was, and I was in that state for 5 years of my life. And it was really hard. And I got to a place though. And to cut to the chase, you asked what was the thing that changed? Well, I knew that I needed to change. And it wasn't so much needed as I did want it, right? To sort of echo back what we were talking about earlier, the want versus need. I wanted to be healthy, but really I needed to be healthy, because I was at a place where I was very depressed and my mental health was in a very bad place. I had suicidal thoughts quite frequently, and I was very withdrawn, and isolated. And I like my video games, I like my movies, and I like my junk food, and that was my happy place. But it got to a point where I realized I was more afraid of not changing than I was of the idea of trying to figure out how to change. And I think that was the lesson that I needed to learn early on, because as much as it was a fear-based decision, right? It was fear that motivated me. And I know fear isn't always a great motivator, not always the purest of motivations, but it's a real motivation. We see this happen all the time with people with big health challenges, right? Like they have a heart attack, they survive, they see their doctor, they're like, you got to make some changes. They make some changes. Why? Because they don't want to die. Right. And so, here I was in this situation where I was like, I'm more afraid that if I don't make the changes right now, I know at 15 that by 20, it ain't going to be better. Because from 10 to 15, it got really bad. And I was like, if I don't make changes now, by the time I'm 20, I got to be honest with myself. It doesn't look any prettier than it is right now. In fact, it will probably be uglier and I'll be worse off. And that was just this startling realization. And from that place, I wanted to get healthy. I went and I expressed that to my dad, who at the time, was very supportive, because up till that point, my parents were so focused on trying to get me to do stuff. Oh, we'll hire you a nutritionist. Let's figure out different ways of eating. Oh, let's get you a gym membership. Oh, let's get you these types of personal training sessions. And it was all these times that every time they said that, I was like, you're saying I'm not good enough. You're saying that I need to change. You want me to change. You don't like who I am. Like that was me. That was my train of thought every time they came to offer help.
Yeah.
But here I was when I went to my dad that one morning after that realization that I want to make some changes. And it was me wanting to make them. And that's what my dad noticed. And he was like, okay, let's go get you something, and he's like, what do you want to do? And I was like, I'd like to have a bike, because it was the one thing I knew that I could do on my own. I knew I enjoyed doing it. I liked the activity of biking. I remember as a kid, I used to love going out on my bikes. I was like, I'd love to bike. I don't have to have anybody around me. I could do it by myself on my pace, my time. And so we went and got me a bike and I started biking. And I remember one of the first places I biked to was the library. And I got books out on fitness and nutrition. And my kids, they laugh at this. They're like, why don't you just Google it? Well, your dad's older than Google, like
Google it. If you said that back in the day, they'll look at you like you were stupid.
They'd be like, what the hell is Google? And because that was, the sort of late 80s at that point. And so I educated myself on things that I needed to do. And then I just was consistent. And it took about 20 months to realize the new lifestyle. And, everything changed from that place. Later on, fast forward a number of years, I was then diagnosed with an autoimmune disease.
Oh, God.
And it's chronic. So I live with that all the time. It's autoimmune neutropenia. Basically, to put this in context, my hematologist, during COVID was like, you should live in a bubble, Dai. And I'm like, live in a bubble? Can you see me doing burpees in a bubble? No, that doesn't work for me. But she was rather serious because, my condition makes me very susceptible to viral infections or bacterial infections. So you can imagine the virus pandemic that we saw, it definitely could raise some alarms. But, here's the thing. And I want anybody that's out there, because a lot of us are dealing with immune issues, autoimmune issues. It's very, very common. It's one of the most common challenges that most people deal with health-wise, And but the cool thing is that there is a lot of support out there if you're looking for it, for other organizations and other people that understand what autoimmune systems need, as far as a health or lifestyle standpoint. And I started to make some changes, and I really started to change my lifestyle at that point. And this is like in my mid 30s. Okay, that this was just over 10 years ago I was diagnosed, and it's actually what was sort of that started to unravel that ball of yarn for me as far as my career was concerned, because all of a sudden I realized when I first got diagnosed, and it took them 3 bone marrow biopsies to figure it out. And even then, they're not 100% sure yet, but they're pretty sure this is what I got. And during that in-between stage, those couple months of not knowing what I had, but knowing that it was rather serious, I was hospitalized for 8 days. At one point, my immune system crashed, and they didn't know what was going on. They put me in the cancer ward in my own private room. People had to wear like hazmat suits to come in because I had no immune system, right? And it was crazy. I felt like I was out of that movie Outbreak, that old Dustin Hoffman movie where everyone's wearing the yellow suits, and in essence, they were wearing blue suits. But, it was my wife coming to visit me. She had to suit up to come and see me because they didn't know what was going on, but they knew I didn't have any immune system. And I came out of that, and they were concerned it might have been a form of cancer, like leukemia in particular. And there was that 2-month period where we didn't know, and we saw my health get challenged in a big way. And I'll tell you, all you have to do is be staring down that barrel and realizing that life could end at any moment. Changes happen pretty darn quick at that time, if you want it to, if you allow it to. And for me, it did. And in those last 10 years, I've really educated myself on autoimmune conditions, but more importantly, lifestyle choices and habits and nutritionary choices that allow me to keep about 90% of the symptoms away. And so I'm even though I've got one of the most severe cases of this condition, because of my lifestyle, most of the issues never show up. My hematologist, she thinks it's just awesome, of course, but it's not normal. But I'm like, well, that's the problem. The problem is that this isn't normal, because we know that with autoimmune issues, if we can keep inflammation down, we can keep things in check, we can manage stress and overwhelm, really just live a healthy, active life, something that we're feeling fulfilled from, a lot of times our symptoms will dissipate, and that should be the normal. The protocol to deal with these issues should be the normal. And that's why when my hematologist says it's not normal what you do, and I'm like, well, that's the problem with the world today, And anyways, those are a couple of the situations. And obviously me giving up alcohol was the biggest one. And my wife, and I'm just going to cut to the chase because I'd like to hear what your thoughts are on this, but she asked me a question on the morning when we were contemplating, or not really, she was the one contemplating and discussing with me what life would look like for us to co-parent our kids. We had been together at 10 years at this point. Both of the kids were under the age of 6. I'd come home after an all-night bender. I don't even remember really getting home, but I remember the next morning waking up, and it was like the last straw. My wife was like, this is it. This is done. Like, this is not a safe environment to raise our kids in. You're not a present father. And I started to plead. I started to try to negotiate one more chance, as I was very good at doing. I'd always beg for forgiveness rather than ever ask for permission. And here I was in this situation. And she asked me a question. And this is the question. So anybody that's listening or watching this, think about your own version of this question, because it is the most clarifying question. It's the question that I fall back on at any single time that I need to realign and get refocused on the life I've chosen to pursue. The question was, Dai, are you being the type of man that you would want to marry your daughters? And the most scary part of that was, at that time, I'll tell you, I couldn't answer to my wife honestly and say, yeah, of course I'm being that kind of person. Of course I'm role modeling to my kids what a man is, what a husband is, what a brother is, what a father is, And what I was role modeling back then, yeah, if a guy showed up that like I was acting over 10 years ago on my doorstep wanting to get close to the ladies of my life, I'd be like, no freaking way, man. Are you even getting across the threshold here? Get out of here. But that's what I was doing, you know, and that was that moment where I made a decision right then and there to stop drinking, you know, and it's now been 13 years, and they've been an amazing 13 years. But obviously switching careers, switching where we live. I mean, a lot of things changed, you know, as soon as when you start to go down a path of change, you got to get used to the fact that it's not usually just one thing that changes. It's usually a whole pile of stuff because it's all connected. But we can get there if we get there. But yeah, anyways, those are those sort of three motivating factors. And that's why I said I'm a bit of a slow learner, right? I had to have three big life events to really get me to a place where I was like, okay, I don't want to have another one of those. What have I learned from these? And how can I help others now see this before they encounter what I encountered? You know, how can I be better provide people with sort of the tools and resources, but more importantly, the mindset to navigate their own challenges in life? Because you know what? We all have them. We all got them.
Yeah.
No one's getting out of this unscathed. We're going to have challenges. It's just, what do we do with them when we get them, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, I have to ask this question, though. There is so much I could ask about this. But with regards to when you had that last bleed, when your wife came to you and when are you would you be the guy to be marry your daughters? Would you want this guy to be that? You personally, did you actually believe you were a father to your daughters then, or just some you know what I mean?
I think I had the title. I don't believe that I always acted the title, though. You know, I didn't always behave as one. You know, I was there, but I wasn't present. I think that's the easiest way to sort of identify where I was lacking. And you know, and I knew I was lacking. I knew I was distracted, and because a lot of times I was making really poor choices. You know, I would go out the night before, I'd go play a round of golf with the guys, which would inevitably be turned into a night out. And you know, and I would turn my phone off. You know, I wouldn't mute it. I'd just turn it off. Say, oh, sorry, my phone died. You know, and that way, get home whenever I get home, she couldn't check in on me. I wouldn't have to check in on her. It was just, I was not being a very good person. You know, and to the people that were closest to me. And my wife was always, you know, she once said to me, and this always stuck with me, is you know, you give everybody else your best energy. By the time it comes around to your family and me, we get whatever's left over. And that was hard to hear. But it was only hard to hear because I knew she was right. You know, that's even worse, right? It's whew. Yeah, I don't like hearing that. I don't know. I want to disagree with that, but I couldn't because I knew she was right. And I knew when if I was really honest with myself, I was like, no, I'm not fully present in my kid's life. You know, I do make a lot of excuses for missing stuff or not showing up or not being there. And it's, you know, I had a career that allowed me flexibility to be there for them when I wanted to. And yet I would say, no, I can't. You know, and that was me just choosing that. And that all changed. You know, obviously I gave up alcohol and I started to work on me. I wasn't working on anybody else. I wasn't giving energy to anybody else. I was giving energy to me and to my family, but more importantly to me. I had to get really selfish. And people are like, what do you mean? Because the only way that you can grow and develop yourself is you got to take full accountability for yourself, right? And I realized that because at 15, when I wanted to lose the weight, I had to do the same thing. You know, I had to get really accountable that no one else can change my health but me. No one could stop drinking but me. Yeah. You know, no one could change my lifestyle patterns or choices to improve on this, you know, that diagnosis, when I got that, I was like, oh my gosh, well, at least it's not cancer. That was my wife and I, we actually celebrated. We were at the movie theater and I saw the hematologist calling through and I was like, I got to go get this. I walked out of the theater to take the call, concerned that it might be negative news, but it turned out, okay, well, it's not cancer. And that was a moment to celebrate. You know, that moment of relief that we felt right away was amazing. And that also made me say, okay, it's not cancer. What is it? Okay, it's not autoimmune issue. I can deal with that. I can work with that. I can make it better. And I just got to work. You know, but that's the point. I chose to get to work because they were changes that I wanted for me. And we all have to get to that place, for change to actually start to happen. But more importantly, to sustain it, we need to be involved with it and accountable to it, but also the ones driving the change boat, And I think one thing I can share with you right now is I've developed a perspective to be more of a champion of change rather than feeling like a victim of change. I think that's probably the easiest way to describe it. I don't know how that resonates with you, but for me, that's sort of what comes with it.
Like, this is the thing, like what people, most people seldomly forget that change, positive change in one's life is a hard journey. Negative change, it's an easy slip. You don't actually realize you're doing it. You drift and drift and drift. By the time you turn around and go, wait, how far have I drifted? It's like, oh, and it could be weeks, months, but normally it's years and decades before you actually realize. And basically, to make the change, to get yourself going in a positive direction, takes hard work, dedication, and effort. So much effort. And when you say this to people, many people just want to shy away from it. And look, it's one of the things when you like go, yeah, bam, this is like, I had to get selfish. It was a case of, yes, you did have to get selfish, but it was a case of to really sort of get focused on things to make things better in your life. Okay, yeah, what do you mean selfish? Bob and Frank want to go and meet up, have a golf game, but it's like, no, I can't do that. I've got to be here, present, helping my kid do this, helping my kid do that. And look, I know with the realm of parenthood, losing yourself as who you were before completely, I never recommend that. You've got to hold on to elements of that, because all that leads down to is a path of regret and sorrow, and sometimes a little bit of mourning for who you once were, because that person should be gone, but sometimes they're still around, but should be gone. But the hard work, dedication, what needs to be done, for the majority of people out there, they don't want to do it because it's hard, it's difficult, it takes focus, it takes time, and they want to have the quick fix, but that's not the way it goes. Shit, if I told you to if I told you your 15-year-old self, okay, tomorrow you're gonna run 2 miles, off you go. You see the look on your face there, it would most probably be blood would drain away from you, and I don't fucking think so. But you know what I mean? That is hard when you're then, but hard work, dedication. If I told you to run 2 miles, if I told you to run 2 miles off this podcast, you are okay.
No problem.
There you go. But it's taken you a lot of time, effort, dedication to get to that point. And if people want other things, go away.
Sorry, the camera's not focusing. Sorry.
Don't worry. If people want to get to that point, regardless of it being fitness, regardless of being lifestyle change, regardless of just basically being a better person, they need to make that commitment, that oath to themselves to I want to be better. I want to go out there to be a different person than I was yesterday, to find my best self. But you have to dedicate it. You have to take that oath to go, right, I am going to be better. And sometimes it just saddens me because people are not willing to do it. And you go, what? Yeah, it's because they're lazy. And you go some people it is because they're lazy. But I would say for a vast majority, and this is not giving these people an excuse or anything, it comes down to fear. Fear of failing, or fear of, worse still, succeeding. And you know what? Who am I if I do succeed at these things? Where are my excuses where if I do like fall down because I've become this new person? Like, I'd simply say to that person, do the thing which will make you different. Do the thing which will help you find yourself more in this world, because so many of us don't know who we are. Like there's 20, 30% we might know of our lives, maybe 40% on the maximum. If you know like 100% of yourself, yes, I've said this before. Yes, you have done and been in dark places, and and you've had to ask many a question of yourself. But that's what many people don't do right now. They don't ask these questions. They don't push themselves, and they fall short,
Well said. It's true. The change piece is interesting because it's, there's times where, I know at any given point, if we sit down and we have a piece of paper and we put at the top things I want to change, and we start to create a list, the point is we all got a list. But then starting to look at certain things, like what are things that I know in changing will affect the other areas I want to change. And what I mean by this is there's usually one area, by focusing on one area first, it will automatically start to shift the other things. And so I always invite people, don't think about trying to change everything all at once. Find one thing, but the one thing that will have the greatest amount of impact on other areas of your life, because even though you might set out to change one thing, inevitably, you'll probably change a number of things. And one of those things will be your perspective on yourself. And I love that you brought up this idea of regret earlier, because this is something I like to remind people of. And it's something I do for myself too, where I ask myself, what's the activity today that if I do, I know I would never regret doing, but I know I regret not doing it. And what I mean by that is when you look at our lifestyle, there's certain things that we do, or maybe we would like to do, start doing more, things like moving our body with purpose, right? Getting out for a walk, right? Maybe having a nice big salad with some cedar plank salmon on it for lunch. I would never say to myself in the middle of the afternoon, you know what, I really regret doing that. I really regret having a healthy salad with salmon at lunch. Like, no. Oh, I regret having that Big Mac meal at lunch. Yeah, that would be something I may regret because it's in conflict with the outcomes I'm trying to create for myself, the things I'm trying to change.
Yeah.
And so if you start thinking about it, what are things that I know if I do for myself, I'll never regret? Because it's just a different way of sort of looking at things. Because if it's the opposite of regret, it's actually, you're probably going to feel very proud of yourself, happy that you did that thing, because that thing, by doing it, is already influencing change in the direction that you want. Because a lot of time people want to change their health, to something. Maybe they want to be more focused, more present, have a better management of their energy, which in turn will manage their commitments, not time, but commitments. It's usually lack of energy that to do the things that we want to do. And so we know by working on our health, we can get back some of that good energy, and we change how we eat. Now we start to thrive rather than feeling like we're just barely eating to survive, get through the day. So there's all these little things, but these little things make huge impact in our life over time. To piggyback what you said earlier, because that's exactly the same point, right? Is that negative compounding effect also works very, very well. Like, just to put this in perspective, think about water. We always hear about people saying, you should really drink more water. I should really drink more water, right? We probably catch ourselves saying that I should really drink more water. And I encourage people, try to drink at least 3 liters a day, especially in the summertime heat that we have, because you'll be surprised how much you perspire, but at least 3 liters, because a lot of people have coffee or caffeinated beverages. Those are actually diuretic. So for every caffeinated beverage, I always say you have to drink twice the equivalent. So you have 1 cup of coffee, drink 2 glasses of water to offset that coffee. As just a little rule of thumb. And hydration is interesting. If you are chronically dehydrated every day, and you compound this out over time, it's been shown that our metabolisms can slow on a 24-hour basis by as much as 50 calories, meaning that our body is burning 50 calories less than it normally would if it was hydrated. So you can imagine if you go chronically dehydrated day after day after day. Well, if you do the math on a year, you've potentially, retained or not burned off upwards of 7 to 8 pounds of energy in your body just because you're dehydrated. So it's amazing, right? When you really think about that compounding effect, because it also works the opposite direction. Well, if you're well hydrated, you're going to burn those excess calories. So that, along with, healthier options, the way you eat, of course, you're going to see things change in a good way. And so just those subtle little things, just teeny tiny little habits, right? It's just making sure you got a bottle of water on your desk. I know that this is 700 mils. I know I want to drink at least 4 of these a day. At least 4. Easy peasy. I do it. And I feel great for it. And I never regret drinking my water. I regret when I don't drink my water. So that's just, just one subtle way of sort of shifting our perspective around change, but especially health changes, because those often are tied to all the other changes we want to make as well.
Yeah, no, this is the thing. And with regards to the change that, you say it's small things. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Just making the effort to be on time for every sort of meeting. If you're like a person who's like constantly late, just being on time. And you're like, oh, okay. Because if you go being on time for a meeting, no, that means, you got to be, it leads to other things where you got to be organized. You got to know what your calendar is and everything like this. So it's not just that, but the skills which you pick up from just being on time are greater than just the one action. So it's people need to be aware of this. And it's it's not as, it's frighteningly simple. And I think this is the reason why so many people easily miss it,
We are our own worst enemies at times. And I know that we can distract ourselves really easily, but we can also justify our choices really easily. Good or bad, or it doesn't. We're really good at it, because most of us have a lifetime to practice it. But it's also recognizing that, hey, when am I using an excuse, and when is it, legitimate? Is this truly a reason for either doing or not doing what I said is important to do for me, and because there's going to be days where things don't go to plan. That's okay. We're talking about the compounding over time. And if you're doing more of the good stuff than you are of the opposite, usually good things trend in the right direction, But I find that the thing that holds most of us back is lack of clarity. Because when we're not clear on what it is we want, or who we want to be, or why we want to have a certain life and lifestyle, if we aren't clear on that, our confidence is not as good as it could be. Because clarity does create confidence. And here's the thing: when we're feeling confident, we're able to take action much more easily, with less resistance, less thinking about it, more just doing. And in itself, the action also builds confidence, which in turn also allows us to continuously align more clarity. So it's sort of this ebb and flow between these three things: clarity, confidence, action, confidence, clarity, back and forth.
Yeah.
And I found, and maybe this is helpful, but there's 3 questions for anybody that's feeling like it's time. I feel like I need some change. I'm not really sure what that change is yet, but I got this feeling like I really want to change certain things. There's 3 questions I invite people to ask themselves. The first question is, can I do this? And this meaning whatever the change is. Like me as that 15-year-old morbidly obese teen, it's like, can I get healthy? Can I actually get healthy? That I was honestly thinking that. I was like, or is this just a wishful thinking? And what I realized was it was lack of education, lack of confidence, as well as lack of clarity. And that's why I couldn't take action. I didn't know how to do it. Even though I said, can I get healthy? And I was like, I know I can get healthy, but I don't know how. And I realized, well, how do I learn the how? Oh, I can either maybe get a trainer or do what I did, which I went to the library, I got books out, because there was no YouTube back then. Okay. So I got books out on fitness and nutrition. I also started to ask questions of some of my peers at school. ones that I knew were healthy, were fit, were very active, and the ones that I could trust and felt I could be vulnerable with, I would ask these questions, sheepishly. And sure enough, I started to get clear on what I need to do and how to do it. I also started to build some confidence, believing that, I could do that. If I ride my bike every day and I change what I eat, these books say that I'll lose weight. Oh, here's some testimonials, some examples of other people that have done it. Wow, they got results. So I can probably get results too. Bottom line was I got to a yes, a hell yes for question 1. So you have to ask yourself first, can I do this? Get to a yes. No matter what you got to do, just get to that yes. Because as soon as you've got a yes to number 1, yes, I can get healthy. That was my answer. You have to follow it up with question 2. And question 2 is, if I do this, will it work? So as much as we figured out the how of what I'm got to do in number 1, now it's like, okay, if I actually start doing that stuff, is it going to work? Because a lot of us have tried things in the past and we haven't gotten the results we expected. And so we already have this sort of feeling like, there's a lot of times where I think I know what I'm doing and I expect that by doing that, I'm going to have certain results, but it didn't necessarily happen. So we sort of start to already have this belief that maybe I'm going to fail. I'm kind of afraid of failing. I mean, I failed before. We see this a lot in the health space, right? A lot of people, diet culture. It's like, well, I tried this. Oh, I lost 15 pounds. Oh yeah, I gained 20 back. Like this constant ebb and flow with people and their weight. It's so frustrating. I get it. It is. And so this question 2, if I do this, will it work? This is again where some of those testimonials or finding case studies or examples of other people that have already gone down the path that you're now thinking that you want to go down, and they've achieved certain results. That's why I love your podcast, but also podcasts in general, because they're excellent examples of people sharing stories and experiences, testimonies of things that they've done and what it allowed them to do in their life and how things changed. So either way, again, we're building our own self-confidence, and we have to get to a yes to number 2. So number 1, can I do this? Yeah, I can do this. Okay, if I do it, will it work? Yeah, it will work. Now, question 3, is it worth it? Now, if I'm talking to a team or I'm talking to an organization, I can use the term it. But when we're talking about us, individuals, human beings, it's better to look in the mirror and ask question 3 in this way. Am I worth it? That's not easy to answer. In fact, it's the hardest of the questions to answer. And I can tell you right now that at 15 years old, I didn't believe I was worth the change. I didn't really see a lot of value for myself. And what I realized was, because I couldn't answer yes 100% to am I worth it, there's actually a follow-up question for anybody that's feeling that same way, at least right now, early on in that journey for change. Question 3B, we'll call it. Who do I need to surround myself with to allow myself to start to experience these changes I want to make? This refers to community. It refers to mentorship, to coaching, to support. Because if I don't have enough belief in myself yet, but I get into a community of people that are already on a similar journey, experiencing similar things, but have already had mistakes, but mistakes they've learned from and now shared in a community, so they in turn can be there to support or pick up the next person that trips and falls. They drip into me that belief that I am lacking, until the point where my cup becomes full enough that I now can honestly say question 3, am I worth it? Yeah, I'm worth it. You know why I'm worth it? Because all these people have told me I'm worth it, but more importantly, I can feel I'm worth it now. And that's the beautiful thing about community, is they'll drip into us the belief that sometimes we don't have in ourselves yet. And they'll keep dripping into our lives, that belief, or a coach or a mentor, someone in our life, maybe it's our best friend, our partner. Sure. That's great too. But either way, who do you have to surround yourself with that navigate those changes? Because if you get clarity on these, trust me, your confidence is going to go way up. And as soon as that confidence is up, I know that now that you know what the action is, or at least that first action, that first step needs to be, you can take it decisively with purpose in every footstep, and know that I'm going the right direction. You're going to be optimizing and tweaking and changing along that journey. But regardless, you've now got direction. You know which way the changes that you want to make are, and you're going that way. And that is huge. That gets you started. It gets you on the path. And trust me, just being on the path is enough a lot of the times, if you're active on the path, to keep you on the path. And I know I'm using that more metaphorically speaking, but it really is just that. So those questions, just to repeat it, can I do this? If I do this, will it work? 3, am I worth it? And number 4, if I can't answer 100%, yeah, I'm worth it. What community or who do I need to surround myself with to help me facilitate these changes that I want to make for myself? If people just write those down, put them on a little piece of paper, put them as a note on your phone. But anytime you start to feel that inkling feeling like, I need to make some changes. I can't accept this. I don't want things to be like this anymore. Pull out those questions because they'll help you isolate the direction, but it'll also help build some confidence so you know what to start doing right away. That's it. That's all I got on change.
You know what? I think that's a perfect place to end this podcast today. Dai, yeah. First of all, let me say thank you for coming on today. You have been a pleasure, an honor, a scholar, sir. And can you let the people out there know where they can find you out on these internets, apart from this post?
I love it. You have the best energy. Honestly, I just love it. And, thank you for just creating this platform. And I feel very honored and a lot of gratitude for being here today and just sharing this conversation. And, if anybody wants to continue a conversation with me, the easiest way to find me is on social, just by my name. Dai is a Welsh name for David, D-A-I. Manuel, Portuguese last name, but it's M-A-N-U-E-L. So yeah, Welsh and Portuguese, I'm a mix. But as I say to everybody, I'm just Canadian, so live with it, whatever. It's all good. But you can find me, I'm most active on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. So just shoot me a note. Just say hi. That's a great place for us to begin. And if you're wanting some resources to start helping you navigate some changes that maybe you're starting to feel that you want to make, my website's got about 1,800 articles on it. And they're all free, and there's lots of content on the website, lots of free resources just to help people get out of their own way and start experiencing more fulfillment, joy, and happiness in their own lives. And so I always say to people, like, unapologetically, get ready. It is a bit of a rabbit hole, but it's a fun rabbit hole to go down, and it's one that will definitely support and help you. So that's the easiest way to get a hold of me, for sure.
You must get on this tsunami of positivity this man supplies. Yes, indeed. I have to say this to you, my friends, my life warriors who are sticking with us to the end, to this very point. Please stay safe, stay well, be awesome, be excellent, be fantastic. Be all the positive things you can be in this world and then some. Have a great day, guys, and yay, you're worth it. Peace. Yeah, and we are out. Why is it not stopping?